You're only a touch away from getting the 4 keys formula used by professional cafe machines. The Impress Puck system ensures intelligent dosing, assisted tamping with a 7-degree barista twist finish, and precision measurement that auto-corrects the next dose. It's all you need to enjoy third wave specialty coffee at home. The best of the Barista Express with the Impress Puck system. You're a touch away from mastery with Breville. You're only a touch away from getting the 4 keys formula used by professional cafe machines. The Impress Puck system ensures intelligent dosing, assisted tamping with a 7-degree barista twist finish, and precision measurement that auto-corrects the next dose. It's all you need to enjoy third-wave specialty coffee at home. The best of the Barista Express with the Impress Puck system. You're a touch away from mastery with Breville.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sam Spillman, and I am the Director of Coffee for Cafe Vita, a Seattle local roasting company, and your 2019 U.S. Barista Champion. Today, I will be your host teaching Intro to Espresso, so all supported by Breville and Williams-Sonoma. Let's give Williams-Sonoma a big thank you for making this coffee club possible. It's so amazing that we get to join in community via Zoom and nerd out on coffee together. Now, today I'm joining you from Chef Steps Studio in Pike Place Market, just below where they throw the fish. Thank you, Chef Steps, for letting us use the studio. It's truly amazing, and excited to be here. Now, as we get started, I know that there's so many people on this call from different parts of the US, and so I want to welcome you on. Turn on your cameras, tell us where you're from, tell us your name. Perfect. Wow, we have Brooke from Dublin, Ryan from Sandy Springs, Georgia, Julie from Kansas. Hi, Julie. Jim from Columbus, Ohio. We have Catherine from Atlanta, Rachel from San Francisco, We have Christina from San Juan, Nina and Andrea from New York, Brenda from Chicago, Alan from Minnesota. Oh my gosh, Alex from Arlington, Maryland. And we have Jeremiah, Rockville, Maryland. Thank you all for joining us. It's so amazing to see your beautiful faces. I can see all of you on screen right now, so this is going to be a blast. Today, in addition, I want to welcome our 2 in-house studio students. So let's say hi to Janelle and Andrea. Hi, you two. Perfect. We're going to have a good time here. So something I want to tell you guys about, and this is super exciting. You're going to want to stay on this class the entire time, because at the very end, we are going to be announcing a winner who will be taking home a 3-month subscription to Breville's Beans program. Beans.com is a subscription platform that delivers from over 50 different roasters throughout the US. It delivers coffee to your door every month. It's a pretty amazing program. It allows you to try different coffees from different roasters and experience new coffee to try to find that one that gets you excited. So stick on the call. At the end, we'll be announcing who will be taking home that 3-month subscription. Sound good? Wonderful. Now, I want this to be an interactive experience. I know that you guys are all around the world, and I wish we could be in studio together, but this is the next best thing. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. Your face will come on the screen. We'll be able to actually interact together, and you can ask your question. If you're a little camera shy, that's okay. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat box. And any product-specific questions that you have, throw them in the chat box, and our product experts from Breville will go ahead and answer those as we go. Sound good? Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so today we will be covering how to pull a shot, how to dial in our espresso, how to steam milk, and at the very end we'll have some time for some Q&A. And also, once again, feel free to ask questions as we go. I want this to be an interactive experience. I want it to feel like we're all together in one space. Sound good? Amazing. Now, as we're getting started, please turn on your machines so they can go ahead and get heated up while I'm going through a little bit about what coffee is and what we're going to be working with today. Wonderful. So if we can get that first slide, we're going to be covering what coffee is. So coffee is actually a seed of a cherry. It's not like the cherries that you find in the grocery stores. It is an actual coffee plant that produces these cherries that are about the size of a cranberry. Now, inside these cherries are 2 coffee seeds. It's pretty wild to think that coffee grows on an actual tree, and it is fruit-based. It is the seed of an actual fruit. It's pretty cool. Now, in order to, so as you can see here in these photos, on the far right, you'll see a cherry that's deconstructed. There's not a lot of fruit. It's mostly skin with 2 seeds on the inside. On the center photo, you'll see that cherries, they ripen at different paces. The green ones are unripe, whereas those reddish pink yellow ones are more ripe. And then to the far left are little seedlings. Coffee takes 5 years, like once you plant a tree, it takes 5 years to actually produce fruit. And then from that point, to get it to a roastery takes even longer. It's pretty wild. So if we move to the next screen, this will show you where coffee can be grown. Unfortunately, in Seattle, Washington, we have nowhere close to enough sunlight to produce coffee cherries. So we have to rely on regions that are really close to the equator. I love this map here because not only does it show the regions that produce coffee cherries because it has the accurate amount of sunshine, but it also gives you the flavor profile that you're going to get from that region. So from Africa, we're going to get more fruit-forward coffees, higher acidity, whereas Asia coffees are going to be more earthy, chocolatey, nutty. And from Central and South America, we're going to have some like stone fruit acidity, mild acidity like oranges, and some nutty and spiciness too. So it's a lot like wine. How many of you like wine? I'm a huge fan. It is very similar in the way that coffee, if it's produced properly and roasted to highlight the flavor of that coffee or the innate qualities of that coffee, it's going to showcase, it's going to give you a direct representation of the origin it was grown in. It's pretty cool. Okay, well, if we move to the next slide, I want to go back to how coffee is produced, where it starts. Coffee, and why I fell in love with this industry, is because it is a people industry. It relies on every step, every stage of the process, and there's people in every stage. So here is a photo of 5 generations of producers that I met in Colombia. Their family's been growing coffee for as long as they could remember. And this is more than just farming coffee. This is their livelihoods. This is how they find passion and excitement. So this is very exciting. This photo means a lot to me, so I'm excited to share it to you. Now moving to the next slide. Once coffee is grown, it has to be picked and that fruit has to be removed. Now, the steps to removing the fruit is called processing coffee. Very complex, I know. But there's 3 different processing styles, and each style actually affects the flavor profile of the coffee. So the first style is a wash process, where all the fruit is removed off the seed, and then the seed is dried. Now, a pulp natural or semi-washed is the next process. And in this process, the fruit is removed, but on the seed is this thin fruit layer called mucilage. It's like if you eat a peach and the pit has some fruit left on that's really hard to get off. Similar idea. That fruit is dried onto the seed, impacting the flavor of the coffee itself, creating a sweeter, more fruity flavor profile on that coffee. Now, the last process is a natural process, and this is where all the fruit is left on the seed and it's dried completely with the fruit intact. Then it's removed after the fact. This creates a more fruity, funky, and more boozy, winey characteristic in the coffee. Pretty cool how the steps of removing the fruit off the seed and how long it's intact affects the flavor of the coffee that you're using. Wonderful, let's move to that last slide. Now, once the coffee is dried, it's sent to, a lot of steps happen, but it gets imported into whatever country it's going to end up in, and it's then roasted. Now, the roasting process is a process of developing sugars within the coffee and highlighting the flavors that are innate to that coffee by adding heat and using time. Pretty cool. Identifying a great roast profile for a coffee takes tons of practice, years of practice, and it's a pretty cool craft that involves a lot of science that I'm still trying to understand. And that's what's so cool about coffee, is you're always going to be learning. Fantastic. So just as a reminder, we are going to be covering a few things today. Now that we've gone over what coffee is, it comes to the final step of you brewing the coffee. Now, it's really easy to mess up brewing coffee. I've done it all the time, and I'm sure you've experienced really bad tasting coffee, and a lot of it comes down to how we're brewing. So once again, today we will be covering how to pull a shot, how to dial in your espresso using your Breville machine, and steps to steaming milk. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat box. We want this to be a fun, interactive experience. I want you to feel like you're in Seattle, Washington at Pike Place Market with us. Wonderful. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to show you how to pull a shot. First thing we want to do is actually, I like to run, oh, this machine is off, I apologize. So it heats up pretty quickly, but I want to run a little bit of water through my portafilter. What this does is it heats up the machine and this portafilter that's locked in right here. We want that to be heated up because metal is very heat hungry. And so when we go to brew our coffee, we want the portafilter to be hot. So then it is not stealing the temperature from our actual brew. Wonderful. So first thing I'm going to do is take this dry rag and I'm going to wipe out the inside of the portafilter. I want to make sure it's completely clean, completely dry. And if you look inside there, you can see there's no coffee grounds, it's shiny, no moisture. We don't want any moisture in the portafilter because that will start dissolving our coffee or extracting our coffee. So once we've done that, we can go ahead and I have this fancy funnel that I'm going to lock on top of my portafilter. You don't need it necessarily. It just helps keep everything in one spot. And I'm going to lock this in. Now, once it's locked in, I'm going to push and let go. Perfect. So at this point, I'm going to settle my coffee. So when we do this, I like to do 2 taps on a countertop or a rubber pad. And what this does is it just sets the coffee in the portafilter, so it's not falling off the edges. That tap is going to settle it in and get it even. We want our coffee bed to be as even as possible because when we press brew, we can't control where the water is going to go. It's going to go through the path of least resistance if it can find it, but if we keep an evenly dense bed, it'll be hard for it to leak out one way, or channel is what it's called. So I'm going to tamp, and the first thing I want to do is set the portafilter down, and I want to hold my tamper like a doorknob with my thumb on top, and then I'm going to lock my elbow into a 90-degree angle, keeping my wrist straight. You want your wrist straight because if you bend your wrist in any type of way, the pressure is going to focus on your wrist and it's going to hurt after a while. So I'm going to lock my elbow into a 90-degree angle and push down. Our goal is to not break our back in the process. You don't have to press hard, just push until it pushes back. But what we want to do is we want to compress it. And what this does is it creates a seal so the coffee doesn't fall out. And what the seal does is it forces the water to build up on top, so then it slowly saturates our bed evenly. See that there? See how if you look on the inside, you should have an even distance all the way around from the rim to the bed of coffee. We want this tamp to be as even as possible. So what I like to do is, like, if you set this tamper on top, see how even that is? We don't want the tamper to be tilted to one way or the other. We want it to be even and flat. Beautiful. Okay, so next, just for cleanliness, I'm going to wipe off the ears. And just as a reminder, I refer to these as ears because they kind of look like ears. And this right here is a portafilter, and what the coffee is sitting in is a basket. Wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pull a shot. So lock it in. There's a little cheat in the group head that will say start here and then twist to lock. You want it to be tight. Get your cup ready and then press brew. So as the espresso is brewing, you'll see these thick syrupy streams come out, and it will start thick, and then as it goes, it will get thinner and more wiggly and lighter in color. This is the transition. It really doesn't tell you much. This is just what pulling a shot looks like. Wonderful. So now we have our first shot of espresso. It's so beautiful to see the cascading of the foam. So that crema on top, that golden part, all it is oils and gases. It doesn't actually taste good. So when you drink, you want to make sure to mix it all up. We'll go into taste and extraction in just a second, but first, let's go check on our students.
No, it's not a pleasure.
How's it going? Good.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here? Pulling my first shot ever. Awesome. How was it? Stressful?
No, actually it was very simple and straightforward.
Okay, cool.
So
yeah.
we're coming to full pressure.
As long as we're following those little steps that I went
Good.
over, it's going, I mean, it's just repetition at that point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's going to get easier once you keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And those will stop on their own. How are you doing?
Good. I
Yeah.
think we figured it out. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah.
It's not as
Amazing.
scary as you think.
Not at all.
It's okay if you mess up too, because then you just do it again, and it's just repetition and building that muscle memory.
Yep.
At-home baristas have a little more of a challenge because they're not making 100 drinks in a day. So practice, 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 practice. Y'all did fantastic.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sam.
Really quickly, I do want to introduce Sarah Dooley here.
Hey, guys.
Sarah Dooley is our national manager for the beans.com subscription platform. She's going to be helping us today. She has years of experience in the industry and is a genius when it comes to coffee. So
Aw,
we're
thank
very
you.
lucky to have her on today.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you, Sarah.
My pleasure. All right, let's take out the portafilters.
Wonderful. Okay. So now that we have the basics of how to pull a shot, we have to start talking about how do we make adjustments on our machine to make our coffee taste good. Really quick, before I dive into that, I'm going to go ahead and knock out my puck. You don't want the used puck to sit in there. Old school train of thought was keep everything seasoned. No, we want to keep it as clean as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and knock this out. And I'm going to dry it out and clean it out with a dry rag. From there, I'm going to purge my group head so the old coffee that got up in the group head can be rinsed off. And then lock this back in. We want to keep our portafilter locked in so it's kept up to the perfect temperature for brewing. Wonderful. Okay, so let's go into pulling the perfect shot. Now, when we're pulling the perfect shot, we're looking at 3 variables. We're looking at how much coffee is going into the basket, how much coffee is coming out, and the time it takes. So Breville has set us up so well by creating these very consistent machines that have a lot of commonalities from the different models. The first thing is that the baskets are 18 to 22 grams. They hold that much coffee. So whether you're using the Bambino or you're using the Barista Pro, you're gonna have same basket sizes. Now, the other thing is that they all utilize 9 bars of pressure for the extraction. Super crucial to have that pressure. That's what allows us to have a 20 to 30 second brew time. Now, the third thing is temperature. Temperature is held at 200 degrees, which is the perfect temperature for brewing to the Specialty Coffee Association standards. Now, the last thing is the pressure that comes from the steam wands and the amount of dryness in the steam allows for you to perfect your microfoam for lattes, and we'll dive into that a little bit later. So when we talk about these 3 variables of how much coffee is going into our basket, how much coffee is coming out, and the time it takes, I'm going to go through the steps of dialing in. So once again, I'm going to clean out my portafilter, make sure it's clean and dry. I'm going to set it on the scale and turn on my scale. What this does is I'll tare it, and that way when I dose out coffee and set it on the scale, it will only pick up the weight that's in the basket and not the portafilter itself. So then I'm going to dose coffee. Let's try that again. There we go. So again, we're waiting for 18 to 22 grams. Okay, so I have 18.5 grams, which is exactly what I dialed into. A scale may be a new concept for you, and that is totally okay. But I'm here to tell you that a scale is going to save you so much trouble. Please invest in a scale. Visually, we want to have this nice little tower on our portafilter, but 18 to 18.5 to 19 grams all looks the same. So it's really hard to tell exactly how much coffee is in this basket without weighing it. So by weighing it, I know exactly what's going in, there's no guessing. So then I'm going to tamp, elbow into a 90-degree angle, push down, perfect. Wipe off the top. And for this one, I like to actually set the scale on the bottom. That way I can weigh the espresso as it pours. So I'm gonna press brew. And for this machine, there's a timer here that keeps track of the time of the shot. We are aiming for 20 to 30 seconds of time. Also, this is the hardest part, so if you have any questions, feel free to throw them out there. We are here to help. This can be very complex and overwhelming, and I don't want it to scare you or make you nervous in any way. So this shot stopped, and I have about 38 grams of espresso out, which is a 1-to-2 ratio. That's what we're aiming for, a 1-to-2 ratio. My time was 21 seconds. So let's review that. We have 18.5 grams in. For you, it can be a range of 18 to 22. Then we multiply that number by 2, and that tells us how much coffee we want out. For me, 18 multiplied by 2 is 36, and I had about a little more than that, like 38 grams. Now, the time needs to be between 20 to 30 seconds. And if you can keep the amount of coffee in your basket consistent and the amount of coffee out consistent, then your time will tell you everything you need to do. So let's go to that extraction slide. When we talk about extraction, coffee dissolves in 3 stages: sour, sweet, to bitter. So when we are pulling our shots, how do we know where we're at in this range? A lot of it is taste, but before we taste, it comes down to the numbers. I'm a huge science head, and it's okay if you're not, because we're not going to go too nerdy today, but it's important to look at the numbers. So if your shot is pulling in under 20 seconds, so it's pulling in 15 seconds, it's really watery in texture, it's like flying out of the spouts, your shot is going to be under extracted, which means not all the flavor was pulled out of the espresso. So then at that point, what we want to do is we actually want to adjust the grind. Now, on all the machines, there's a dial on the side that allows you to change the grind size to finer or coarser. What's nice about the Breville machines is there's a cheat that says finer is actually slower and coarser is actually faster. But I want you to imagine having a bucket of sand and a bucket of rocks. With the bucket of sand, the water's gonna flow through a lot slower, right? Versus the rocks, there's more space in between the rocks, so water has more room to move. So if our shot pulls in 15 seconds, I know right away that it's under extracted and we need to make an adjustment before tasting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the grind size finer. Now, a couple tips with changing your grind size. The first thing is when you make a grind size adjustment, what you're doing is those blades that are crushing the coffee to grind it are moving closer together when you make it finer. So the time you have set for the dose is how long the coffee is going to be grinding for. It has less room to space for the coffee to move through, therefore it's going to lower your dose because less coffee is going to come through in the time you have set. So when you change your grind size, make sure to also check your dose. Always check your dose by weighing it on the scale. Now, if you make one notch change, only make one notch at a time, because otherwise if you make 2, 3, 4 notches, the espresso is going to catch up and it's going to be way far. You're going to overshoot it. It's easier to make one adjustment at a time and then we can add more as we go. So when you make a grind adjustment, make one notch change, and what you'll want to do is grind a dose, so grind some coffee and actually dump it out, because that coffee was set to the previous grind size. Now, when we dump that out, we're then getting to that fresh grind size and we'll actually see the fruit of the changes we made. Fantastic. So I wanna show you an exercise, because I know this was a lot, and tasting espresso may just be a new concept for a lot of you. This is an exercise I've used for years in training baristas on how to understand espresso and what it should taste like. Espresso has a range of what tastes good, but it's really hard to identify what that is when espresso is so intense. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to split the shot in 3. So we can taste the 3 parts and identify the sour, the sweet, and the bitter. So I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to dose a shot. Once I've weighed my espresso shot, I'm going to assume that it is dialed in. So I'm gonna go ahead and grind some coffee. And if you're following along, I'll give you some instructions, but also feel free to do this on your own time if you're unable to keep up with it, or you just want to do it at a different time so you can watch it. So what I'm going to do is I have 3 cups prepped here, and I'm going to lock my espresso in. And I'm going to take the first 10 to 12 seconds in 1 cup. And then I'm going to switch out my cups, getting 3 parts of the shot. You can also tell by the color, once it gets really yellow, light in color, go ahead and move it to that 3rd one. Perfect. So we have our 3 parts of the espresso. Like I said, these 3 parts are representative of the sour, the sweet, and bitter. So let's go check on our students and do some tasting. Sound good? Let's go. Okay. How are we doing over here?
We are ready to taste some coffee.
Yeah, let's go.
Some espresso.
Okay, so Sarah has gone ahead and split these shots into 3 for our students. We are going to taste through these, and these are not meant to taste good. So you're probably gonna see some funny reactions, and that's totally normal. So the first part we're gonna taste is actually the 3rd part of the espresso, or what's supposed to be the end of the extraction, which is going to be a little more bitter. It's really why this is important to taste is that it's going to teach you how your palate responds to bitterness.
It's very bitter.
Very bitter, right?
Very bitter.
So can you explain what that bitter is like? Like, what does your palate feel like? Is it like biting into fruit, or is it like cocoa powder?
I'd say biting into fruit, and I feel it like the back of like my mouth. I'm feeling like that bitterness. It's like a punch in the throat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So bitterness to me is like almost like sticking cotton balls in your mouth.
Yeah.
And it hits you like on the back of your palate, and your whole mouth is just like, you need some water.
It lingers there too.
Yeah, it lingers, but not in a good way. Yeah. Cool. Great job, y'all. Okay, so now this is the fun one. This is the first part of the shot. Let's go ahead and taste it.
Oh, wow.
Delicious.
Flavor. Oh my gosh, it's like right there.
That was sarcasm. So what are you tasting in this one?
It's like really sour.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very sour. And I felt this one at the front of my mouth as well, so like in contrast.
Yeah.
Prior.
So this one is representative of that sour, the first stage, all those acids that were dissolved. And this one should taste like salty, sour.
Very acidic.
Yeah, very acidic.
So
Yeah,
acidic.
and like not a lot of substance either.
Yes.
Like,
It's really flat.
yeah. Okay, cool. So this sweet part. Now, when we're talking about dialing in espresso, we need all these components together to build the perfect shot. But this will give you an idea of what balance tastes like. This should be the sweetest part of the shot.
Oh yeah, it definitely is like the most balance between the 2, that blend.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So this one you should have a little more roundness to it. Has a little more cohesiveness. There's some acidity, sweetness. The texture is like pleasant. It's not too syrupy or too watery. So this is what we're aiming for. And for all those that are here with us today, I want you to try this exercise. It helps so much in understanding how espresso tastes, because espresso is intense. It's like having a spirit for the first time, like whiskey. I remember being like 21, and my dad gave me a shot of whiskey, and it was a really top shelf one. I sipped it and I was like, this is disgusting. That's because I wasn't used to the intensity, and that's the same for espresso. So let's start breaking down that intensity and getting past it so we can see the flavors.
This helps really just pick out the different components within the espresso too, this exercise.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Wonderful. Okay, so it's time to pull a shot and taste our espresso.
Let's do this.
Now I'm going to clear these glasses out of the way, but now that we've tasted the extreme parts, we need to go through and taste how our espresso tastes. So let's go ahead, pull a shot.
Stick
that on to help you out.
Yep.
Tear it out.
This. Okay, let's see if I remember this correctly.
Yeah.
In
And you just
here.
tap it once it's in.
Okay.
Push
and
it.
then- Yeah. And then, do I check those?
You can check it. Yeah, let's check it. What are you at?
13.6 grams.
All right. You know what to do.
So
keep
if
going.
you pull out your portafilter after the extraction and it's kind of soppy and wet, it's okay. That happens, and there's no real explanation for it, and it doesn't dictate whether your shot is going to taste good or bad. Always rely on the numbers.
Mine keeps going as 0. Do I
yeah.
do teas?
17.7 grams. Okay.
Good. And settle it like a cake. Just use your logic.
Hey Sarah.
Yep.
You're a pro with these scales.
Yeah.
This one is automatically tearing.
Oh, that's funny. It's probably enough.
Oh, okay. Yeah, perfect.
We were really good at before.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do we have any
Hold
other
it down.
questions
Line
out
yourself
there?
up. Thumb to thumb.
And then I
wrist
tamp
above
it.
your.
Yes. Okay.
What was that?
These two lined up. Yeah.
Ah.
And just make it flat. Perfect.
If the pull comes through too fast, your grind size is too coarse, so we need to move in the other direction. We need to make it a little finer.
Wipe off everything. Yep.
Thank you, Michelle, for your question.
Do the polish. Yeah.
Perfect.
No pressure. Just a little spin.
Go ahead and
Alright.
lock it in.
Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah.
Now, this is a trick that I learned
Yeah.
when working as a barista, but if you set your scale under here, we can actually weigh it as it pours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sorry.
Perfect.
Here? Yeah, perfect.
Give you a cup.
Okay.
Left to right.
And then I hit the 2-cup one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hit the 2-cup, and then we're going to
Top
tear the
2
cup.
cup
So then
buttons.
it's just picking up the weight of the espresso.
And then grab those grounds in the
And this, we're not even going to look at the time. We're just going to look at the weight, because the weight is going to tell us when to stop. So if we put 18 grams in, we're shooting for about 36 grams of espresso out.
Got it. Okay.
Now when we stop the shot, it trickles out a little more. So I like to stop it a few grams before.
Okay.
So we'll stop at like 32 grams. Go ahead and stop it there.
Okay.
Perfect. So we got 38 grams out. That's awesome. Our time, I saw it was 22 seconds. So we're in zone. That's
Okay.
fantastic. So what we're aiming for time zone for espresso is 20 to 30 seconds.
Got it.
Now, if espresso dissolves in sour, sweet to bitter, a shot that's 20 to 25 seconds is going to showcase a little more acidity, whereas a shot from 25 to 30 seconds is going to have a little more sweetness and a little more dryness on the finish. Do you want to taste it?
Yeah, of course.
So what I would do is I would swirl it around. Yeah, just kind of cool it down a little bit.
Okay.
And it also breaks down the crema a little bit. That crema, it's beautiful. It does not taste good. It's really bitter and dry. So
Yum.
when you taste espresso, make sure to mix it up a little bit. Do you taste
It's really
it?
smooth.
Is it good? Okay, cool. How we do over there?
So good.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, you can have an amazing coffee, but spend so much money on the perfect beans, but if you're not dialing it in properly, you're not going to get the full experience of it. So, wonderful. Okay, are we ready for some milk steaming?
Yes.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Fantastic.
Good job.
Okay. I hope y'all are doing great out there. Feel free to raise your hand with any questions. Come on the screen. I want to see your faces. As we move forward, I'm going to talk through milk steaming. So the first things first. First things first is we are going to make sure we have the proper amount of milk in our pitcher. So I have a Breville pitcher here. And the amount of milk I have in is measured to this line. The nice thing about the Breville pitchers is that there's markings for how much milk to put in your pitcher. It's very, very helpful. It gives you a range. I think anywhere in that range is going to be safe. Basically, you don't want to have your milk measured up here because it's going to expand in volume and overfill the pitcher. At the same rate, we don't want to have it like way down here just because you won't be able to get the texture that you're looking for. Now, steaming is a two-step process. It is a step of aerating and a step of integrating. So when we're steaming, what we're trying to do is we're trying to use the steam wand to introduce air and to blend those air bubbles into the milk. Now, when we're doing this, I'm using whole milk. You're totally free to use any milk that you'd like. If you're using an alternative dairy-free milk, try to find one that is barista series because that milk is created to mimic the same structure as whole milk. And you're just gonna steam it the same, maybe a little cooler in temperature to highlight the sweetness of it. Fantastic. So first thing you wanna do is we're going to purge the steam wand. And as I'm steaming milk, our students are going to be doing the same. Perfect. So we're just going to focus on steaming milk for this one, and then we'll put it together with pulling espresso and building a latte. So first things first is we want to take the steam wand, and if we're looking overhead here, we're going to rest it in the spout of the pitcher. And as you can see, I have this straight line between the steam wand and the handle. So I want to keep that straight line, move my steam wand until it's centered in the milk, give it a slight pivot to whatever side's most comfortable, and then turn it on. The only motion we're going to make as soon as it starts moving, you can hear the steam going. We're going to bring the steam wand or the pitcher down to aerate. You can hear this tearing sound. What this tearing sound is telling us is that we're introducing air into the milk. We want quiet aeration. That quiet aeration is going to create these tiny bubbles that are easier to incorporate. Once the milk is about the temperature of your hand, you can slightly submerge the steam wand. The tip of the steam wand should never go more than ½ an inch below the surface of the milk. So right now I have this nice whirlpool that is blending the bubbles. I want the tip of the steam wand to be close to the surface so the pressure is focused on pushing the bubbles down. Fantastic. I want to turn my steam wand off, set my pitcher to the side, and wipe my steam wand clean while also purging it. So I'm going to angle it towards the drain tray, turn it on, and while it's being purged, I'm going to go back to my milk and I'm going to groom it. So when I'm grooming, what I'm doing is I'm swirling my milk, knocking out any bubbles that I might have, covering it so it doesn't spray your face. And we want our milk texture to look like wet paint. You can almost see like the glisten on top. It's shiny, you don't see any bubbles. It doesn't look like I did much to my milk. But remember, I started with the volume here and now I brought it up to here. So that is where we have our latte milk. Fantastic. So let's go over to our students over here and we're gonna check their milk steaming.
So we'll move. All right, so we'll pat this together.
Hello.
How's it going?
I just did my first milk steam.
Perfect, let's see it.
Okay. This is what we got going on here.
That's great. So set it on the counter, go ahead and knock out any bubbles.
Amazing.
Just like that?
Yeah, give it a good swirl.
It's just an awkward
Perfect. So
spot.
see how it's kind of disappearing on the sides?
Yeah.
It's a little thin in texture.
If I
Whereas
can
like
see.
mine is actually a little too thick. It's more like cappuccino. It's like marshmallowy.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and pour this in a cup.
And we're gonna get air into the surface. This is just a phase of getting like
Yeah, you got it?
Oh yeah.
when it feels like it's warm.
Perfect.
We're no longer adding air. We're just bringing it.
So how did that feel? Does it make sense how it works?
It was a little stressful to understand all of it, but as I'm walking through it, it started to make sense. We're listening to different cues of the milk, like the bubbles and different things like that. But as a first timer, there was a lot going on too.
Yeah. Steaming milk for the first time honestly reminds me of like learning how to drive a stick shift.
Yeah.
Because in theory, everything makes sense. But then when you go to do it, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many moving parts.
So quickly too, like the time period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not long. It's like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So when we're steaming, we just want to remember, keep the tip of the steam wand very close to the surface. Keep your pitcher at a tilt so you can have that vortex. And blending is almost more important than adding air to the milk. So that swirl, that vortex is what's going to distribute the air throughout the milk, creating that velvety texture. It takes so much practice though, and your first pour was fantastic. Awesome. Okay, so let's look at these milks here. So if we get down and low, we can see that, see how yours has like a little less than a centimeter of foam on top?
Yeah.
So we'd want to increase that so it's a full centimeter or closer to ½ an inch.
How would we increase that exactly?
Great question. So what we'd want to do is we want to introduce a little more air in the beginning.
Okay.
And by blending those air bubbles, that added air, it's going to create a little more density in it. Mine has almost a little too much. It's a little over ½ an inch. But the texture is glossy. And over here, we're a little thin. I think there's some bubbles on top. Andrea, I think you could have gotten rid of those bubbles just by knocking your pitcher.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's something I didn't do.
Yeah, so that's called grooming the milk. A lot of your milk after steaming can be fixed by knocking the pitcher. So what you're gonna do is once the milk is in the pitcher, after you're done steaming, hit it up and down with your hand on top so it doesn't spray you in the face. Give rid of the bubbles. Give it a really good swirl to keep the milk loose, as they say, so it doesn't stiffen up and separate. Also, if you're steaming and your milk gets a little too foamy, transfer it. Move it into another pitcher, and this pitcher will hold back some of that foam, so this will have you a little more set up for success to pouring a latte.
Awesome.
Do you guys want to pour a latte?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
For sure.
So why don't you go ahead and prep your espresso shots?
Okay.
Oh, you
one.
have one prepped?
No, I
Oh,
have.
man.
Oh, wait, we've
yeah,
got.
you guys are pros. Okay. So go ahead and prep your espresso shots. And then steam your milk.
All right, let's load up our pitchers. You got one on top.
Oh, I do have one here.
Yeah, let's do that one. That one's
Okay.
going to be great for pouring, too.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
Double
Pleasure.
espresso.
Yes.
All right.
And now that we're dialed in, we don't even have to worry about
Yeah.
it. The espresso machine's gonna take care of it for us. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so walk me through this.
Okay, so I'm gonna put this.
So before we do
Wait.
this, let's go
Oh, wait, we
ahead
have to
and
do the-
purge. Yeah.
The priming. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Almost done, and then we'll switch back to.
and it takes a second. Sing your ABCs, your favorite song. Just let it run for a second. See how it's kind of sputtering? It's
Yeah.
getting rid of all that hot water so it doesn't go into your milk.
Okay.
Because especially if you're using whole milk, we don't want to be adding air to make it, or water to make it non-fat. The whole
Yeah.
point is we want it to be creamy. Fantastic, turn it
Okay.
off. Okay, cool.
And then we'll move this over, right?
Yeah,
And then we can put
perfect.
this in.
Okay, so
down, okay.
I'm gonna do adjustment here.
Okay. Yes.
Flatten it out.
And then we turn at the end, right?
and then twist.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Here.
Awesome. So bring it down. Start aerating right away. As soon as you start hearing the steam on working. So I'm just pulling it down so we create those bubbles. And see how I twisted a little more and our vortex took
Yeah.
off?
Yeah.
That's what we want. So we're aerating. Once it gets to about the temperature of our hand,
Yeah.
that's when we'll stop and we'll blend,
great
blend,
cue.
blend. Yeah. It's about 100 degrees, but if you're healthy, your body temperature should be similar.
I think it's
So
pretty
keep it blended, submerged. The second half should just be blending.
Okay. I feel like it's hot now.
Okay, perfect. I'll shut it off for you.
Okay. And then I was like,
Awesome. Now go ahead and set it down.
okay.
And I'll wipe your steam on for you if you want to groom your milk. And give it a really good swirl.
Nice swirl.
Can I see it real quick?
Yes.
Yes, this looks great. So I'm really loosening it up.
Yeah.
So it's easy to pour. Fantastic. So why don't you grab your pitcher and your cup? If you step a little bit back,
This way.
yeah, there we go. So swirl your espresso a little bit to loosen it up.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, now
Oh, wait,
tilt
no.
your cup at a 45-degree angle. We're gonna go high and slow, and then low and fast.
Ooh.
There you go. Perfect.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Oh my gosh, thank you for the assist.
Yeah, absolutely. Pouring latte art is like the fantastic. Great job. to even get white on your latte is such a big win, honestly. Andrea, great job.
I made a blob.
Janelle, great job. It's fantastic. What do you want to name your blob?
Dot.
Dot.
Dottie.
Dottie?
Dottie.
So let's say hi to Dottie. I think
I'm very proud of that. I'm not gonna lie.
we'll set it down right here. That's Dottie. Again, getting a white anything on the top of your cup is so valuable. And it takes a lot of practice. So, Andrea, you did this all by yourself your first time, and you're killing it. Fantastic job. If you don't get latte art the first time, don't be mad. Don't be too hard on yourself. It takes so much practice. It took me like 3 years before I could even get Dottie on my latte art. So you guys did a fantastic job. Wonderful. How do you feel about it? Any questions?
It was a lot easier than I thought, less intimidating. Yeah,
Yeah, once the machine is dialed in, it was like you press and go on the espresso, focus on the milk.
That's the thing, is like if we can take the time to dial in up front, it makes the rest of the experience very easy, and the Breville machines do such a good job at keeping things consistent. So thank you all, you've been fantastic students. Do we have any questions out in the crowd?
Yours looks so good.
I'm gonna run back to the other side. Awesome. So if you've poured your own latte art, let's see some photos. Let's show us your latte art. Come on screen. We want to see your pours. This is a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of messing it up and then fixing it and adjusting. And there's so much to learn, and it takes a lot of time. Okay, so it looks like we have a question from Uda. How would you get more foam for a dry cap without overheating your milk? Fantastic question. So what you're going to do is at the very beginning of steaming, so when you're in position, you have your pitcher, you turn it on, and you start hearing the steam wand working, you're going to be more aggressive with adding air into your milk. So what I mean by that is you're going to bring the pitcher down a little further so the steam wand comes out of the milk a little bit more. Do this until the milk is about the temperature of your hand, and then you're going to blend those bubbles in. So if you want a really dense foam texture, aerate really aggressively in the beginning and blend, blend, blend. Looks like we have a question from Linda. Linda has a Barista Pro, and when they make a single shot, it gives the amount of a double shot. So then it just tastes like coffee. How can I fix it? Great question, Linda. Okay, so these buttons are actually programmable. So if you're looking for a single shot, what you'll want to do is you'll want to program it to the volume you want. I believe this button right here comes pre-programmed to pull 60 milliliters, which is a single shot. So if you wanted to program it and it's pulling way more than 60 milliliters, what you do is go ahead and remove your portafilter, prep a shot, and then before you go to pull it, go into menu. There we go. Scroll to select custom for the single. Perfect. And then we lock it in. And then we press brew with that button. We stop it when the espresso gets the volume that we want, and from that point, the machine will memorize that volume that pulled out. Does that make sense? Fantastic. We have a live question from Wendy. Let's hear it, Wendy. Hi.
Hi there. I have a two-part question. First part, I've noticed a lot of times in brew, sometimes the puck is dry, like it comes out in one thing. So a lot of times it's the machine, it sticks to the top.
Yeah.
And so you have to try and wiggle it off and it falls apart and it's just happy. So you're having that problem. And then I get a lot of times, like sometimes when you can get it dialed in and it is somewhat consistent, sometimes it'll stick. But if I go from the larger portafilter or from a double shot, and I tried dual shot. I bought extra ones that like double shot. It's like there's no consistency with those two, even though it's the same setting. So I like that.
Okay, so it's a little hard to hear you. I'm getting about 50%, but it looks like you're having issue with consistency, specifically to your espresso or milk?
To the espresso.
Espresso, okay.
Espresso shot.
With your espresso, a lot of it comes down to the espresso prep. So when you're loading your portafilter and getting that even bed. So when you're prepping your shots, do you use a scale?
I have not been, but I think I'm gonna try.
Okay, so I honestly, it's impossible to know exactly what's happening without a scale, and that can be very frustrating. Like, you can get close, but you're gonna experience inconsistencies because your shot prep, the amount of coffee that's going in, it's gonna be a little inconsistent every time. I wish coffee was like super black and white, but it is not. It does not work the way that like we would hope it would work. It's always changing and always different. So even though you have your dose set, the amount of coffee set, or the amount of time the grinder is going to grind, every time it's going to be a touch different. Having a scale will help you add or take away coffee when you need to. So I would highly recommend a scale. Outside of that, focusing on tamping properly, making sure that you're distributing the coffee so it's even in the portafilter. I think those are the big things. The espresso machines, when it comes to the actual extraction, that's going to be consistent. So the temperature of the water, the pressure, those items are going to be consistent. So it all comes down to what happens here. And that's where a scale is going to be very valuable because it will tell you exactly what you need to know. I hope that helps. Awesome, cool. And also you can feel free to reach out to us later on. Once you get that scale, let us know how it's going. We can always assist. You can reach out to me through my socials on samline.at on Instagram. I love answering coffee questions. So if any of you guys have questions, throw them my way. I'm coffee 24/7. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next we have a question. If my milk isn't right, will I be able to make art? Fantastic question. If you're trying to do latte art, it comes down to the quality of your milk. If you have super airy milk or it's so foamy, it's going to be really hard to get any kind of latte art on your latte. Think of it this way. If you make your milk too foamy, it's like trying to draw a portrait with a fat marker. It's really hard to get any kind of detail. You'll just get like a blob on top. Now, if you have really thin milk, it's really hard to control. There's so much, it's just moving around, and it's really hard to get a defined whiteness that's happening on top for your latte art. Fantastic. Moving to the next question from Lindsay. Is it best to use espresso beans and not coffee beans? I love this question. So this is where the industry has done all of you wrong. All coffee can be used as espresso. Crazy. So where this is confusing is you'll go to a grocery store and you'll see a bag of coffee that says espresso roast. That is a good sign that you don't want to use that coffee. Because if it says espresso roast or espresso profile, what they mean is that they roasted it so dark to be an espresso because in the early days of coffee was developed so much in the roaster that was super dark, and that was called an espresso roast. Now, you can put any coffee in your hopper and brew it. But what you don't want is to use coffee that has oils on the outside. What that tells you is it's been roasted too much, and all those oils are actually the flavor that's not actually going to end up in your cup, but instead it's going to clog your grinders. So find like more of a medium to light roast. How long did it take me to master milk steaming? This question's from Allie. Oh man, it's taken me years. I've been in the industry for over 12, 13 years. And I remember, especially without proper training, it was almost impossible. I did like my first heart probably 2 years in the game. So don't put pressure on yourself for latte art. All I care about is that your latte tastes good. I've had some lattes that are beautiful with some of the most defined latte art, and they taste horrible. So don't worry about the latte art. It takes so much practice. Watch YouTube videos, keep coming to these classes, practice, 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 practice. Okay, so we have another question. What's the proper proportion of espresso to milk for a latte? It's whatever you want it to be, honestly. So in cafes, you'll see lattes be 8 ounce, 12 ounce, 16 ounce, sometimes larger. Now, it's really your preference. If you want it to be more concentrated, use less milk. If you like it to be less coffee forward, use more milk. But there's no rule to what a standard for a latte is. I would say if I had to put a number to it, it'd be 8 to 12 ounces. Ben asked a question of what scale do you recommend? Well, the Breville provides a barista kit that includes a scale, and it's fantastic. I would recommend anything that can fit the portafilter on top and that it measures in the units of grams, though. When we're talking about, we have another question about using fresh ingredients. Of course, you want to use fresh milk because you don't want your milk to taste bad. But when it comes to coffee, what is fresh coffee? When do you want to use it? I would say that when you look at a bag of coffee, look to see if it has a roast date on it. If it doesn't have a roast date, it doesn't really tell you much information. That coffee could have been on that shelf for a very long time. So I would go to your local cafe or somewhere where you can talk to a professional that can walk you through the coffee selection process. But you want to use coffee from about 5 days off roast to about 3 weeks off roast. But really, once a coffee gets too old, it's just gonna be really hard to slow it down and get it between the 20 to 30 seconds. But if you use it too fresh, there's a lot of fresh gases that are gonna make your coffee taste bitter. So give it about 5 to 7 days before you break into a coffee. Fantastic. We have about a minute and a half, and I want to take a group photo. So I'm going to call our students over so they can be a part of the photo. Students, come on over to my side. Everybody turn on your cameras. We're going to take a photo together. Fantastic. Hi everyone. I'm seeing everybody's faces pop up. Thank you for joining us today. Fantastic. Wonderful. Okay, let's take a photo. Go ahead and smile and say coffee. Yay! Woo! Thank you all for joining us today. I would love to see your latte art pours or your espresso. And the last point of business that we need to do today is announce our beans.com winner. We have Nina Johnson. Nina Johnson, you have won 3 months of a free subscription to the beans.com program. Congratulations. The Breville team will be in touch to walk you through that process. Go, Nina, you got some coffee coming to your house.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate y'all taking the time. And Nina, congrats. This is a very exciting win. Who's there with you?
Thank you so much.
Who's that with you? Hi. There's two. Oh, there's two. Hi. Thank you for joining. Y'all are amazing. Wonderful. We are going to wrap up. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free to send them in the chat or touch base with us offline. Stay tuned for our next class, which will be coming up in an hour. That's going to be Intro to Latte Art. We're going to dive into how to make those beautiful images on our lattes. Thank you all so much for joining today, and have a wonderful weekend.